very interested, Simon, to get your take on this. Leicester City, it wasn't that long ago that Brendan Rodgers was saying, do you know what, we have to have something of a reboot, we have to have something of a rebuild at the football club if we're to start to being taken seriously again in the Premier League as maybe top 6, maybe top 4 challengers. He said that is the direction they have to go, and as a result of that, the prospect of some faces being changed at the football club on the playing side might actually have to happen. In fact, on that, it would seem that Kasper Schmeichel now very close to joining Nice down in the south of France. But the question I would ask this morning, Simon, has Brendan been forced into something of an upward U-turn, and has the rebuild he was talking about collapsed before it could even get underway? He has said in recent times, in fact, after their 4-1 FA Cup defeat to Nottingham Forest, I said it before about having changes in the squad. It's a lack of hunger. That's why a lot of these players are not top players. When you stop getting it, you can't quite get there, then your time it could be up. And then just some weeks ago, he spoke to me and he said to us on this show, that rebuild, it really has to happen.
I think it's just natural, Jim. It's just a healthy shake-up of any squad is important. You know, sometimes the best coach is competition. We get some really talented players here, and it's not just so much players moving on. It's also bringing players in that can really compete and challenge the first team. So that's important. Competition is very, very important. We've still got young players that are developing here, and like I said, we've got experienced players that are fantastic professionals, but I think any team needs refreshing, and especially if they're doing well. But that would be the idea. Come the summer, hopefully we can do that.
So hopefully they can do that, but they're not doing that. I mean, he said on several occasions since that he wants about 5 or 6 in to refresh his squad. As you and I sit and chat this morning, Simon, at 10:36 live on talkSPORT, Leicester, the only club in Europe's top 5 leagues yet to register a new player.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting change of events, isn't it? I mean, I didn't think Brendan spoke particularly well after the Nottingham Forest defeat in the FA Cup, and I think we said it at the time. There's no good you coming out with this stuff because there's enough. You're the manager. You put those players out on that pitch. You're the FA Cup holders. You should have had more about you in a game against the Championship side at the time. Now, of course, Nottingham Forest have gone and got promoted, so it puts a slightly different tilt on the argument. I don't like this constant reference in the media of U-turn. It's a construct of the media. People can change their minds. This U-turn is a
you're guilty of the odd U-turn.
Well, it's a terminology that ultimately is designed to discredit someone. If you change your mind or something, or new information comes to light that makes you adapt your thinking, that's not a U-turn. That's called changing your mind and adapting to the circumstances that you now find yourself in. Brendan Rodgers, in an ideal world, would have liked to have believed that given he's changed his tune about the top professionals he's got in the dressing room, because they're the same professionals that he had in the pitch against Nottingham Forest that he'd said to everybody lacked desire and weren't top players. So make your mind up, right?
Well, exactly.
What you've got here.
Yeah.
But with that in mind, he is now adapting to the circumstances, which is a strange one, because we've talked about Leicester City, the ambition of the owners. We all know the tragedy that beset that club several years ago, and we also know the achievements that club had in terms of winning the Premier League in the most unique fashion and also winning the FA Cup 2 or 3 years ago. So Brendan was brought back into English football to be able to regain the poise that he once had when he was at Liverpool in terms of being perceived as a top Premier League manager. So it's becoming a little bit of a difficult challenge for him now because everyone is moving through the gears. Tottenham are regrouping. Arsenal are beginning to regain some poise. Man United, well, we don't know whether they're Arthur or Martha or not at the moment, so we'll put them to the side, right?
Yeah.
But Liverpool and Man City. So all of a sudden, this, and then Newcastle come into the mix now as a fox in the henhouse.
Yeah.
All of a sudden, Leicester, which is a model that people like Newcastle should want to emulate, because they've got to get past teams like Leicester on their journey to the holy grail of potentially buying the Premier League, if that's what they're going to do.
And you would think they will, as long as Leicester stand still as they're doing.
Well, yes.
I mean, as I said to you, Simon, Rodgers has said he wants about 5 or 6 new faces to refresh his squad.
But clearly there has to be an out policy before there has to be an in policy.
Yeah, but now he's saying, what's changed is my knowledge from a financial perspective.
Yeah,
I became aware towards the end of the season that the club would have to balance its books. Then, of course, that becomes very difficult. The club will not look to spend money they don't have, and that's where the club is stable. And they will always be very sensible. So in other words, if they're going to do anything, they've got to get rid of Maddison for 50 million before they think of bringing anybody in.
That's what clearly is the situation, is that Brendan is being enlightened, and perhaps he should have been more enlightened in January about what the reality of the situation was going to be in the summer. It would seem that they're going to have to sell players to bring players in. By the way, there's nothing really wrong with that. You can't build this butter mountain of players and just keep putting things on the top. You do have to trade. Everybody trades. Now, the consequence of it is how have Leicester developed over the years? Have they traded well? Well, the argument would probably say, yes, they have. They've sold some of their best players, taken top money for them, because they couldn't retain people like N'Golo Kante. They couldn't retain Danny Drinkwater at the time. They couldn't retain Riyad Mahrez. They got top dough for them, and they continue to build and evolve and buy decent players.
I agree, but when they went out to Forest in the Cup, should he not have known then what he now knows?
Well, it depends what he was told by the ownership model at the time. They might have changed the economics of their thinking. They might have other businesses that don't allow them to put as much money into this business as people would like them to. Or maybe Brendan was just in a fit of pique and at the time singing off a particular hymn sheet that no one had written for him. So with that in mind, he is now in a situation where, how does he behave? I tell you how he behaves. He behaves like a proper, rounded, professional football manager should behave. He doesn't have a petted lip. He doesn't backdoor it through one of his mates in the media and start singing songs about the ownership model.
No,
and
he
doesn't like it.
And to be fair, that's a
he
good
does
point.
it properly.
Yeah.
So with that in mind, what does it do for him? I think it puts him behind the 8 ball a little bit, because clearly there needs to be a refresh at Leicester. Clearly they aren't going the right way, and there was questions about Brendan last year in the various European tournaments they participated in because of their early departure.
True.
And their lack of lustre in it.
True.
And they do need a refresh. Would I back Brendan Rodgers? Yeah, because I think it's a difficult argument to make that you're going to get someone better than Brendan Rodgers in some of these jobs, because I think he's a very, very good manager. Now, he has to do it with less of a checkbook than maybe some of these other managers have, and do it in a fashion that gives him the opportunity to build a side in his own image, and he'll have to trade. And if Maddison has to go and other people have to go, then so did Mahrez, so did Drinkwater, so did some of these other top players, N'Golo Kante. They've all gone, and so did Harry Maguire. They've all gone. And Leicester have continued to be an elite Premier League side amongst the top 8 in the division regularly and repeatedly.
Apart from being a damn good manager, and he is, I think he's clever with words, because he's saying every manager in this league wants a better squad, but I'm not one who's going to sit here and kill my board. I'm not going to do that. Santa Claus isn't going to come for me. In other words, I understand the parameters under which I am operating, and I have to operate like this.
Yep.
So in other words, Leicester fans this morning as we speak, Simon, cannot expect any incomings unless there's significant money coming in to allow them to do that. And the significant money is AKA James Maddison, you would think.
It looks likely, yeah. I mean, obviously people have got to meet the right valuations and pay whatever we think of this Narnia monopoly money world of football players now. It is what it is, right? And so there's a valuation that the market places on things. There's a valuation that the club place on things. And Leicester have been adept at it. This is not a model they haven't done before. I mean, they sold Maguire, they sold Mahrez, they sold Drinkwater. They win the Premier League. The first thing they did was sell the captain and the holding midfield player, because that's the nature of the beast. So despite the fact
but Brendan previously was talking about the funding of a huge rebuild.
Yes, but he
there
didn't
ain't no rebuild because
he didn't tell you how that funding,
there is no funding.
But he wasn't specific enough to tell us that actually he said that some of these players need to go. We need to have a refresh. So we can jump to the conclusion that means that the owner's just going to sit there shelling out cash, or we can also then look at it and say perhaps what he meant was that I'm going to have to get rid of some of these players, bring some dough in for them, and then I can reuse that dough. We don't know what he meant. It really and truly what he meant was I'm going to get given what I want when I want it. What he's found out that he's not going to have that. He's going to have to do a little bit of work to be able to balance his squad.
You see, this is exactly why, and you scoffed at me at the time, I've taken Newcastle's to finish top 6. You and I have got a £1,000 bet on that. This is exactly why I would expect Newcastle to be above Leicester.
Yeah, that's fine.
When the final day of the season
and
comes.
I've already offered you, if you want to cop out of this bet, I can discount it down because you're going to pay it. And what I'll do is go and buy Alan Brazil a nice bottle of wine with it. With your money. I know you'll appreciate that.
It's a charity bet. It's a charity bet. The £1,000 will go to a charity of yours
hang on a second.
choice.
You're defining where I put the money now, are you?
Well, I think that's only fair, isn't it?
What, the Jim White charity for getting it wrong every week?
No, you would. Oh, let me tell you. Let me tell you. No, listen. Whoever wins wins. But the point, though, by and large, I think this illustrates to me why somebody like Newcastle, who've got Botman in, who will not stop there. They're talking about Maddison, will finish above the likes of Leicester, who are standing still.
But with respect to Newcastle, they needed better players. and they needed to improve, and they needed to keep on moving forward, and they needed to invest significantly in the quality of player. Leicester have a lot of quality in their dressing room. The question is their motivations right with some of those players? And clearly the argument that Brendan was advancing in February after the FA Cup defeat was it wasn't, and I held him as much responsible for that at the time.
I remember.
Because I thought it was lightweight.
Yeah.
You can't send a group of players onto a pitch defending an FA Cup that you won 6 months earlier under aroused and blame just the players. The players get away with murder. And the only people that don't seem to be accountable in football these days are the players. But notwithstanding that, the reasons why the coaches are paid big bucks, put in control of situations and have the authority is to send people out in a proper mental state.
Sure. Leicester fans listening this morning, and there are many, I can see some of the messages coming in. Are you a bit concerned at the moment? No incomings? I mean, Leicester, as we sit and chat this morning, the only club in Europe's top 5 leagues yet to register a new player.
Interesting to see Kasper Schmeichel going, because I remarked last year that I didn't think he was at it. Right? And there was a horror in the room.
I don't think Kasper was all that chuffed about you saying that. I don't care.
But the point is that they obviously don't think he's at it because they've sold him to Nice, haven't they?
Yes. Yeah, he's gone. Ali Nice, he's down in the south of France. Maybe Kasper's having the last laugh. What a lovely place to live. So he's off down to the south of France. It would seem Kasper Schmeichel out of there. But who's coming into Leicester? As I say, right now, the only club in Europe's top 5 leagues yet to register a new player. Leicester fans, are you concerned somewhat? The season's upon us this weekend. Well, not this weekend. Yeah, this weekend. I forget where I am. We're at Tuesday, the 2nd of August. 03717 22344.
Jim White and Simon Jordan. Monday to Thursday morning, 10 till 1. On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.